It all started with an offhand remark from my buddy Mike. We were sitting in his backyard, beers in hand, talking about everything and nothing. I'd been married to Amy for 10 years, and while things weren't perfect, I thought we were doing okay. I worked long hours as a project manager for a construction company, and Amy worked part-time at a local boutique. We had 2 kids, Megan and Jake, and a dog named Max. Life was busy, but manageable. "Man, you should join me at the gym sometime," Mike said, taking a swig of his beer. "They just hired this new trainer, and he's got everyone whipped into shape." I laughed it off. "Yeah, maybe I should. Haven't seen the inside of a gym in years." Mike shrugged. "It could be good for you. Plus, Amy seems to be enjoying it." That caught my attention. "Amy's going to the gym now?" "Yeah, I've seen her a few times. Didn't she tell you?" I shook my head, trying to remember the last time Amy mentioned anything about going to the gym. Our conversations had become routine, mostly revolving around the kids, bills, and household chores. When did she start going to the gym, and why hadn't she mentioned it? That night, I casually asked Amy about her day, hoping she'd bring it up. She talked about work, picking up the kids, and what she planned to make for dinner the next night, but no mention of the gym. Maybe Mike was mistaken, I thought. Or maybe it was a recent thing and she hadn't had a chance to tell me yet. A few days later, I came home early from work, feeling the need to reconnect with my wife. The house was quiet, the kids were at a friend's house, and Amy's car was gone. I texted her, asking where she was. "At the gym," she replied. "Be home soon." Mike was right. Amy was going to the gym, and she hadn't told me. I tried to push the uneasy feeling away, telling myself that she probably just didn't think it was a big deal. But a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Our marriage had hit a rough patch a few years back, but we had worked through it. At least I thought we had. That night, I lay in bed next to Amy, listening to her breathe softly as she slept. I remembered the times when we couldn't keep our hands off each other, the late-night talks that stretched into the early hours of the morning, and the dreams we had shared for our future. Where had that gone? When had the distance between us grown so vast? I resolved to make more of an effort. We needed to reconnect, to find our way back to each other. Little did I know, I was about to uncover something that would shatter the life I thought I knew. The following weekend, I decided to surprise Amy with a date night. I arranged for the kids to stay with my parents and made reservations at her favorite restaurant. When I told her about it, she seemed excited. But there was a flicker of something in her eyes that I couldn't quite place. The night started off well. We talked, laughed, and for a moment, it felt like old times. But as the evening wore on, I noticed Amy checking her phone frequently. She excused herself to the bathroom several times, and each time she returned, she seemed more distant. On the drive home, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Amy, is everything okay?" She glanced at me, her expression guarded. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," I said, struggling to find the right words. "You've just seemed different lately. Distant." She sighed, looking out the window. "It's nothing, really. Just a lot on my mind." I wanted to press further, to ask her about the gym and why she hadn't mentioned it, but I didn't. Instead, I let the conversation drop, hoping that whatever was bothering her would pass. As we pulled into the driveway, I saw a car parked a few houses down. It was dark, but the streetlight cast a faint glow on the figure sitting inside. My heart skipped a beat. Was someone watching us? "Did you see that?" I asked Amy as we got out of the car. "See what?" "That car down the street. It looked like someone was sitting in it." She glanced over, her expression unchanged. "You're being paranoid. It's probably just a neighbor." I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, but it lingered. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, filled with doubts and suspicions. I needed to find out what was going on, and I needed to do it soon. The unease gnawed at me for days. I tried to act normal, to go about my daily routine without letting on that I was suspicious. But every time Amy left for the gym, my mind went into overdrive. What if she was seeing someone there? What if she was using the gym as a cover for something else? I needed answers. One Friday evening, Amy mentioned she was going to the gym the next morning. "They're hosting a special class," she said, her eyes lighting up. It's supposed to be really intense. Sounds great, I replied, masking my suspicion. Maybe I'll join you one of these days. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Yeah, maybe. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, formulating a plan. If the gym was hosting a special class, I could check their website for the schedule. I grabbed my phone and searched for the gym's site. To my surprise, there were no special classes listed for the weekend. In fact, the gym was supposed to be closed for maintenance. My heart pounded. Why would Amy lie about something so simple? The next morning, I pretended to leave for work early. I kissed Amy goodbye, telling her I'd see her later. Once I was out of sight, I circled back and parked a few blocks away. From my vantage point, I could see our house clearly. I waited, heart racing, until I saw Amy leave. She got into her car and drove off, and I followed at a safe distance. She drove straight to the gym. The parking lot was nearly empty, which made sense if the gym was closed for the weekend. Amy parked and walked towards the entrance, looking around nervously before slipping inside. I parked a short distance away, my mind reeling. What was she doing in there? I waited for what felt like an eternity before deciding I had to see for myself. I approached the gym, noting that the front door was slightly ajar. My pulse quickened as I slipped inside, careful not to make any noise. The gym was dimly lit, and the usual bustling atmosphere was eerily silent. I crept through the empty gym, past rows of machines and weights, until I reached the locker rooms. Voices echoed faintly from behind a door marked, "Staff only." I moved closer, my heart pounding in my chest. The voices grew clearer, and I could hear Amy's unmistakable laugh, followed by a deeper male voice. I pushed the door open slightly, just enough to see inside. My worst fears were confirmed. There, in the middle of the room, was Amy, her clothes scattered on the floor. She was wrapped around a muscular man I recognized from the gym's promotional flyers, her fitness trainer, Brad. They were tangled together on a bench, lost in the throes of passion. My stomach churned, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I wanted to storm in, to scream and confront them, but I was frozen in place. The scene before me was a grotesque parody of intimacy, and the betrayal cut deep. I watched as they moved together, oblivious to my presence. Unable to bear it any longer, I backed away and left the gym. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, hurt, disbelief. How could she do this to me, to us? I drove aimlessly for hours, trying to process what I'd seen. By the time I returned home, Amy was already there, acting as if nothing had happened. "How was the class?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "It was great," she replied, smiling. "Really intense." I nodded, my heart breaking a little more with each lie she told. I needed to confront her, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed to gather my thoughts, to figure out my next move. The image of her with Brad burned in my mind, fueling my resolve. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The following days were a blur of barely controlled rage and meticulous planning. I played the role of the loving husband while my mind churned with the betrayal I'd witnessed. Every smile Amy gave me, every touch, felt like a knife twisting deeper into my gut. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I had to confront her. It was a Wednesday evening when I finally snapped. The kids were at a sleepover, giving us a rare night alone. Amy had made dinner, and we sat at the table, eating in silence. I could barely touch my food, my appetite lost to the storm brewing inside me. She looked up, sensing my tension. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice tinged with genuine concern that only fueled my anger. I put down my fork, the metal clinking against the plate. "No, Amy, I'm not okay." She frowned, confused. "What's wrong?" I stared at her, feeling the dam of my restraint breaking. "You know damn well what's wrong," I spat. "I know about you and Brad." Her face went pale. "What are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me!" I shouted, standing up so abruptly that my chair tipped over. "I saw you two at the gym last weekend. You lied to me, Amy. You lied about everything." Her eyes widened, and she stood up, trying to reach for me. "Jake, please, let me explain." I swatted her hand away, sending a plate crashing to the floor. "Explain? What is there to explain? I saw you having sex with him!" Amy's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care. I was beyond caring. I was lonely," she stammered. "You were always working, and I—" "Don't you dare blame this on me!" I roared, grabbing another plate and hurling it against the wall. It shattered, sending shards flying. "I work to provide for us, for this family, and this is how you repay me?" She backed away, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Jake. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I laughed bitterly. "A mistake is forgetting our anniversary. This was a deliberate betrayal." I grabbed another plate, ready to throw it, but she stepped in front of me. "Jake, stop, please. You're scaring me." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I looked at the plate in my hand, at the mess around us, and then back at her tear-streaked face. The rage subsided just enough for me to drop the plate, which clattered to the floor unbroken. "Get out," I said, my voice deadly calm. She shook her head, sobbing. "Jake, please, let's talk about this." "I said get out!" I screamed, pointing towards the door. "I can't stand the sight of you right now. Pack your things and leave." She hesitated, but the look in my eyes must have told her I wasn't bluffing. She rushed to the bedroom, and I could hear her hurriedly throwing clothes into a bag. My heart pounded in my chest, the adrenaline from our fight leaving me shaky and hollow. When she reappeared with her bag, she paused, looking at me with a mixture of fear and regret. "Jake, Don't," I interrupted. "Just go." She nodded, tears still falling, and walked out the door. The sound of it closing behind her was like the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. I stood there, surrounded by the wreckage of our dinner, my chest heaving with the effort of holding back more rage and tears. The house felt eerily silent and empty. I sank to the floor, among the broken dishes, and let the weight of everything crush me. The woman I had loved, the life we had built together, it was all in pieces now. And I didn't know how to start picking them up. The days that followed were a haze of anger and determination. My world had been turned upside down, and while the initial shock was unbearable, it slowly transformed into a burning need for retribution. Amy had shattered my trust, and I was going to make sure she felt the same pain, if not more. I knew exactly where to start, by targeting the person who had helped her betray me, Brad. I spent hours devising a plan, one that would hit both of them where it hurt the most. Amy had already left the house, staying with a friend as she figured out her next steps. I could tell from our brief, tense phone calls that she was desperate to talk things through. But I wasn't interested. My focus was on making them both pay. The first part of my plan involved Brad's gym. I knew that he had built a reputation as a top-notch trainer, and his clients adored him. His livelihood depended on his spotless image. I made a few phone calls, using an anonymous voice modulator to report him for inappropriate conduct with his clients. I crafted emails with fabricated evidence, including photos and testimonies from fake clients detailing his misconduct. It was meticulous work, but I was fueled by my need for revenge. Within a week, the gym launched an internal investigation. Brad's name was dragged through the mud, and he was temporarily suspended. His face was plastered all over social media, with comments ranging from support to outright condemnation. His clients began to cancel their memberships, not wanting to be associated with someone under such scrutiny. The gym, eager to protect its reputation, distanced itself from him, and it wasn't long before he was let go. Amy, on the other hand, was still trying to reach out to me, sending text messages and leaving voicemails, pleading for a chance to explain. I ignored her, focusing instead on the next phase of my plan. I had access to our joint bank accounts, and I knew that Amy had a small stash of savings she kept for herself. I transferred a significant portion of our joint savings to my personal account, leaving her with just enough to get by, but not enough to rebuild her life easily. I also knew that Amy had a prized collection of designer handbags and jewelry, items she had accumulated over the years. While she was out, I went through the house, gathering everything of value. I took her collection to a pawn shop and sold it all, using the money to hire a private investigator to dig into Brad's past. I wanted to uncover anything that could further ruin him. The investigator was thorough. Within days, he provided me with a file detailing Brad's history. Unpaid debts, a string of failed relationships, and even a minor criminal record from his younger days. Armed with this information, I contacted Brad's former employers and landlords, feeding them the details and ensuring his name was further tarnished. But I wasn't done yet. I knew that Amy had taken refuge at her friend Lisa's house. Lisa was a mutual friend, but she had always been closer to Amy. I figured if I could drive a wedge between them, Amy would be even more isolated. I sent Lisa an anonymous letter, detailing Amy's affair and hinting that she might not be the loyal friend Lisa thought she was. It worked better than I expected. Lisa confronted Amy, and their friendship quickly dissolved into a mess of accusations and broken trust. Amy's life was falling apart, and Brad's career was in ruins. But I still felt empty. The revenge had been satisfying in a way, but it hadn't brought me the closure I needed. I decided to take it a step further. I knew that Amy's parents were conservative and had always been proud of her. They lived a few states away and weren't aware of what had happened. I sent them an anonymous letter, complete with photos of Amy and Brad together, detailing their affair and the chaos it had caused. The fallout was immediate. Amy's parents called her in a fury, disowning her and cutting off all financial support. She was now truly alone. With everything in motion, I finally decided to confront Amy one last time. I called her and told her to meet me at our house. When she arrived, she looked worn and defeated, a shadow of the woman she once was. "What do you want, Jake?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I wanted to see the damage," I said coldly. "I wanted to see what my revenge looks like." Tears filled her eyes. "Jake, please, I've lost everything. I know I hurt you, but this is too much." I felt a flicker of pity, but I quickly extinguished it. "You brought this on yourself, Amy. You destroyed our marriage, our family. This is just the consequence of your actions." She sank to the floor, sobbing. I know, but please, Jake, stop this. I can't take it anymore." I looked down at her, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction mixed with a hollow emptiness. "It's done, Amy. There's nothing left to take. I just wanted you to understand the pain you caused." With that, I turned and walked out of the house, leaving her to face the wreckage of her life. As I drove away, I couldn't help but wonder if I had gone too far. But then I remembered the betrayal, the lies, and the heartbreak. She deserved every bit of it, or so I told myself. As I drove away from the house, the weight of everything I had done settled over me like a dark, suffocating cloud. The rush of executing my revenge began to fade, leaving behind a turbulent sea of emotions. Anger, sadness, satisfaction, and a gnawing sense of emptiness all swirled together, making it hard to breathe. Betrayal is a strange beast. It gnaws at your soul, consuming your thoughts and emotions until there's nothing left but a hollow shell. The woman I had loved, the mother of my children, had torn our life apart with her selfishness. Every memory we had built together now felt tainted, poisoned by her deceit. The nights we spent talking about our future, the mornings we woke up wrapped in each other's arms, all of it seemed like a cruel joke. I thought about the moment I had discovered her betrayal. The way she had laughed with Brad, the intimacy they shared, it felt like a knife twisting in my heart. The trust we had built over a decade had been shattered in an instant. How could she do this to me? How could she throw away everything we had for a fling with a fitness trainer? The anger burned hot, fueling my need for revenge. Seeing Brad's life unravel had given me a sense of control, a way to channel my pain into something tangible. But as satisfying as it was to watch him fall, it did nothing to heal the wounds inside me. I had destroyed his career, ruined his reputation, and left him scrambling to pick up the pieces. Yet the satisfaction was fleeting, replaced by an even deeper sense of emptiness. Amy's betrayal cut even deeper. She had been my partner, my confidant, the person I trusted most in the world. And she had lied to me, over and over again. Every time she had come home from the gym, every time she had smiled at me and said she loved me, it had all been a lie. The realization was a heavy burden to bear, and no amount of revenge could lighten it. I thought back to our confrontation, the look of fear and regret in her eyes as I hurled accusations and broke dishes. I had never seen her like that before, so vulnerable, so broken. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay. But the rage inside me wouldn't allow it. She had to face the consequences of her actions, to understand the depth of the pain she had caused. But now, as I drove aimlessly through the city, I couldn't escape the feeling that I had gone too far. Yes, she had betrayed me, but had my revenge really brought me any closer to healing? Watching her life fall apart, seeing her lose friends, family, and stability, it hadn't brought me the closure I thought it would. Instead, it had left me feeling more lost than ever. The house felt like a mausoleum, filled with memories of a life that no longer existed. I wandered through the empty rooms, each one a reminder of what I had lost. Megan and Jake's laughter, the quiet moments Amy and I had shared, even the arguments, all of it seemed distant, unreachable. I had wanted to punish her, to make her feel the same pain I felt. But in the end, all I had done was deepen my own wounds. Sleep was elusive. Night after night I lay awake, haunted by images of Amy and Brad, by the sound of breaking dishes and Amy's sobs. The satisfaction of revenge had given way to a crushing sense of guilt. Had I destroyed her too thoroughly? Had I let my anger consume me to the point where there was no turning back? I remembered the way Amy had looked at me during our final confrontation. The fear, the regret, it had all been real, and I had walked away, leaving her to face the consequences alone. The part of me that still loved her, that remembered the good times, was conflicted. Had I been too harsh? Could we have found a way to heal together? But another part of me, the part that had been shattered by her betrayal, refused to let go of the anger. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. The problem was, so did I. In the weeks that followed, I tried to find a sense of normalcy. I threw myself into work, spending long hours at the office to avoid the emptiness at home. I reconnected with old friends, seeking solace in their company. But no matter what I did, the feelings of betrayal and revenge lingered, a constant reminder of the life that had been torn apart. Counseling helped to some extent. My therapist, Dr. Mills, was patient and understanding. He encouraged me to confront my feelings, to acknowledge the pain and anger rather than burying them. Healing takes time, he said during one of our sessions. It's important to process your emotions, to allow yourself to grieve. I knew he was right, but it was easier said than done. The anger still burned, the pain still cut deep. Some days it felt like I was drowning, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. But other days there were moments of clarity, of acceptance. I began to realize that healing wasn't about forgetting or forgiving. It was about finding a way to move forward, to rebuild my life on my own terms. Amy and I still had to communicate, if only for the sake of our children. Our conversations were strained, filled with awkward silences and unspoken accusations. She was trying to rebuild her life too, and part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction knowing that she was struggling. But another part of me, the part that remembered the love we once shared, felt a pang of sadness. In the end, I knew that revenge had only brought temporary relief. The real challenge was finding a way to heal, to let go of the anger and pain that had consumed me for so long. It was a journey, one that would take time and effort. But for the sake of my children, and for my own sanity, it was a journey I had to undertake. And so, with each passing day, I took small steps towards healing. I focused on the things that brought me joy, my children, my friends, my work. I allowed myself to feel the pain, to confront the emotions that had been festering inside me. And slowly, very slowly, I began to find a sense of peace. The betrayal would always be a part of my story, a scar that would never fully heal. But it didn't have to define me. I was more than the sum of my pain and anger. I was a father, a friend, a man capable of rebuilding his life. And that, I realized, was the greatest revenge of all. Divorce was inevitable. After everything that had happened, there was no going back. Amy and I had become strangers to each other, separated by a chasm of betrayal and pain that couldn't be bridged. The only thing left to do was to formalize the end of our marriage and try to move forward as best we could. We decided to handle the divorce as amicably as possible, for the sake of Megan and Jake. Despite the bitterness between us, we both loved our children and wanted to shield them from the worst of our fallout. We met with our respective lawyers and worked out the details: custody arrangements, division of assets, and support payments. Sitting across from Amy in the lawyer's office, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was still anger, of course, but also a deep sadness. This was the woman I had once loved more than anything, the mother of my children, and now we were here, dismantling the life we had built together piece by piece. "I think it would be best if the kids stayed with you," I said, breaking the tense silence. "They need stability, and the house is familiar to them." Amy nodded, her eyes downcast. "I agree. But you'll have joint custody. You can see them whenever you want. We both knew that our work schedules had always been demanding, and it would be easier for the kids to stay in one place. The house held too many memories for me, and I didn't want to disrupt their lives more than necessary. The lawyers droned on about legalities and paperwork, but my mind was elsewhere. I thought about how I would explain this to Megan and Jake, how I would help them understand that their parents still loved them, even if they couldn't live together anymore. When the meeting ended, Amy and I walked out into the parking lot. The tension was palpable, but there was also a sense of finality. This chapter of our lives was coming to a close. "I'll start looking for a new place," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll be out of the house by the end of the month." "Jake, I'm sorry," Amy whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "I know that doesn't mean much now, but I am." I nodded, unable to find the words to respond. Sorry didn't even begin to cover it, but at that moment, I just wanted to leave. Over the next few weeks, I packed up my belongings and looked for a new place to live. It was a painful process, going through the remnants of our life together and deciding what to keep and what to leave behind. Every item held a memory, a moment from a time when things were good. I found a small apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't much, but it was a fresh start. I moved in, setting up my new life in a space that felt empty and unfamiliar. The first few nights were the hardest. The silence was deafening, and I found myself missing the chaos of family life. Meanwhile, we sat down with Megan and Jake to explain the situation. Amy and I presented a united front, reassuring them that we both loved them and that none of this was their fault. "We're still a family," I told them, my voice breaking slightly. "Mom and Dad just need to live in separate houses now." Megan, ever the sensitive one, burst into tears and clung to me. Jake, on the other hand, tried to put on a brave face, but I could see the confusion and hurt in his eyes. "Will we still see you, Dad?" he asked, his voice small. "Of course, buddy," I said, pulling him into a hug. "I'll see you all the time. You can come over to my new place and we'll have sleepovers and do all the fun stuff we used to do." The first weekend the kids stayed with me was bittersweet. They explored my new apartment with a mix of curiosity and sadness. We tried to make the best of it, watching movies, playing games, and talking about their school and friends, but I could see the toll the separation was taking on them. I did my best to create a sense of normalcy. We established routines, planned activities, and I made sure to be there for every soccer game, school event, and birthday. But no matter how hard I tried, there was always a part of me that felt like I was failing them, that I couldn't make up for the family we had lost. Amy and I communicated as necessary, coordinating schedules and discussing the kids' needs. Our interactions were civil but distant, the wounds still too fresh to allow for anything more. Over time, the anger began to fade, replaced by a lingering sadness and a sense of resignation. The kids adapted to the new arrangement better than I had expected. They missed having both parents under one roof, but they seemed to appreciate the effort we were both making to be there for them. They were resilient, and their smiles and laughter became my lifeline, reminding me that there was still hope for happiness in this new chapter. One evening, after dropping the kids back at Amy's, I sat alone in my apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened. The revenge, the divorce, the upheaval. It had all taken a toll on me. But as I looked around my small, sparsely furnished living room, I realized that this was my chance to start over. I picked up my phone and called a therapist, deciding it was time to work through my emotions, to find a way to heal and move forward. It wasn't going to be easy, but I owed it to myself and to my children to try. As I hung up the phone, I felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to find my way. And with each step, I would rebuild my life, piece by piece, learning to live with the scars and finding strength in the love I still had for my children. This wasn't the ending I had envisioned, but it was a new beginning. And maybe, just maybe, it would lead to something better. Life after the divorce was a series of adjustments and new beginnings. The initial months were a whirlwind of emotions, but gradually, I began to find my footing. My small apartment, once a stark reminder of everything I'd lost, started to feel like home. I filled it with new memories, new routines, and a sense of purpose that I had thought was lost forever. Therapy became a crucial part of my healing process. Dr. Mills helped me navigate the complex emotions I was dealing with: anger, sadness, guilt, and the lingering sense of betrayal. He encouraged me to confront my feelings, to understand them, and to let them go. It was a slow and often painful process, but with each session, I felt a little lighter, a little more in control of my life. The kids were my anchor. Every weekend they spent with me was a reminder of what truly mattered. We made the most of our time together, turning my apartment into a second home for them. We cooked meals, played games, and explored new hobbies. I took them hiking, introduced them to photography, and we even started a small garden on my balcony. Their laughter and love were a balm for my wounded heart. Megan and Jake adapted remarkably well. They missed the old days, of course, but they adjusted to the new normal with resilience and grace. They thrived in school, made new friends, and seemed to grow closer as siblings. I made it a point to be there for them, to listen and support them as much as I could. Amy and I maintained a civil relationship for the sake of the kids. Our interactions were mostly through text or email, coordinating schedules and discussing their needs. Over time, the bitterness faded, replaced by a tentative peace. We were no longer husband and wife, but we were still co-parents, and that bond was stronger than the hurt that had driven us apart. One evening, after dropping the kids off at Amy's, I decided to stop by a local coffee shop. I had been going there more frequently, finding solace in the routine of ordering a coffee and reading a book. The barista, a friendly woman named Sarah, always greeted me with a warm smile. "Hey, Jake," she said as I walked in. "The usual?" "Yes, please," I replied, smiling back. Sarah had a way of making everyone feel welcome, and her cheerful demeanor was contagious. As I waited for my coffee, I noticed a flyer on the community board advertising a photography class. It had been years since I'd picked up my camera, and the idea of immersing myself in something creative again was appealing. "Thinking about joining?" Sarah asked, noticing my interest. "Yeah, I might," I said. "I've always loved photography. It could be a good way to spend some of my free time." "You should go for it," she encouraged. "It's never too late to start something new." Taking her advice to heart, I signed up for the class. It became a highlight of my week, a chance to focus on something positive and meet new people. The instructor, a talented photographer named Laura, was passionate and inspiring. Her enthusiasm reignited my love for photography, and I found myself looking forward to each session. As the weeks passed, I began to rebuild my social life. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones through the photography class. I even started dating again, cautiously at first, but gradually with more confidence. The scars from my marriage were still there, but they no longer defined me. One day, after class, Laura approached me. "You've got a great eye for photography, Jake," she said. "Have you ever thought about doing this professionally?" I laughed, shaking my head. "Not really. It's just a hobby." "Well, if you ever change your mind, let me know," she said with a smile. "I think you'd be great at it." Her words stayed with me. The idea of turning my passion into something more was intriguing. I began to explore the possibility, taking on small projects and building a portfolio. It was a new challenge, but one that brought a sense of fulfillment I hadn't felt in a long time. One Saturday, while Megan and Jake were with me, we decided to have a picnic at the park. I brought my camera along, and we spent the afternoon capturing moments of joy and laughter. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I realized how far we had come. "Dad, can I see the photos?" Megan asked, peering over my shoulder. "Sure," I said, scrolling through the images. We laughed at the silly faces and marveled at the beauty of the sunset. "You should be a photographer, Dad," Jake said. "These are amazing." "Maybe I will," I replied, ruffling his hair. "Maybe I will." The future was still uncertain, but it was no longer something to fear. It was an open canvas, waiting to be filled with new experiences and new memories. I had learned to live with the scars of betrayal, to find strength in my pain, and to embrace the possibility of happiness once again. As I sat there with my children, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a sense of peace. Life had taken an unexpected turn, but it had also given me the chance to rediscover myself and rebuild my world. And for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to the journey ahead.